Hello, and welcome to First Issues Weekly, the compilation of the weekly comic review show First Issues Now. Every day you can check out the newest first issues on First Issues Now, or weekly, in a batch, like this, right here. I'm AJ Carey, the comic archivist, and these are the comics released for the week of October 1st, 2025. I swear soon I'll be done with the home repairs to get back on a schedule that isn't 1 week later. Plus side, I have a deadline for the end of this weekend to finish or else codes will fine me $1,500, so I'm gonna brute force my way through all of that. Anyways, time for the show. I loved the first series of Gotham Academy when it came out. Great row, I keep forgetting how long I've been doing this show. You can also hear me gush a smidge about it over on the Then and Now of Birds of Prey, which is over on the Then and Now of Comics podcast channel, or on my YouTube channel. It was great, and I wish DC had any sort of actual marketing department so more people knew that Gotham Academy existed. Maybe this one will be different, as we look at Gotham Academy First Year Number 1. Story by original creators Becky Cloonan, Brendan Fletcher, and Carl Kerschel. Script by Brendan Fletcher officially, art by Marco Ferrari, colors by Eva Dela Cruz, with letters by Steve Wands. The school has secrets. So does she. It's going great. Olive Silverlock has a problem, and it's shaped like Gotham's favorite hero, Batman. He saved her when her mother lost control, and got Commissioner Gordon to pawn her off on Bruce Wayne, who promptly shuffled her off to Gotham Academy boarding school, with a bunch of awful rich kids. As if she wasn't traumatized enough already. How will Olive navigate her trauma as a new student? Who will she share her first kiss with? And why are the existing fans talking so much about maps? Find out now! I'm sorry, I had to read the solicit like that because it comes off so much like it wants to end with a wah 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 wah. So, I didn't hate this issue. I kind of liked it, but I'm not sure if I liked it enough to follow up issue by issue. The first Gotham Academy had some teasers and hooks to keep you invested, wanting to know more and read the next issues. While this doesn't. It's an oversized issue, but it repeats so much that there comes a time when Olive's trauma in regards to her mother, or the irrational Batman-related trauma, feels so forced that if this was a normal-sized issue, I think the book would actually have trimmed down to be really good at directly looking at Olive. So seeing how that affects her and how much she's holding on to it in flashbacks and actions does make sense, but it's also, well, to be a bit of a snob, it's unsubtle about it. Not to mention, it feels safe as sin when it comes to portraying how Olive should be. But then we get into, well, trauma's different for many people, so don't put assumptions and expectations on her. I think what hurts this book the most for me is that it feels like it wants to be a slow burn book. But then editorial, after they started plotting, went, hey, you know, we said we were give you 6 issues, you're getting 4, deal with it. And then there's this scramble to try and squeeze in all the setup that they had in their heads that would be spaced out over the issues, setting up and throwing them into one issue, causing Olive to kind of just be buffeted around by so many plot points coming up, rather than being there by her own character volition. She's getting a roommate despite saying she had her own room. Ouch. Quick, cut to orientation. Crash out over a bunch of bitches. Now here's Kyle for a day. Oh, your mother may be visiting. Pow, Scarecrow, what are you doing here? Wham, end of issue. I don't want to say that it could be because there are 3 voices crafting this story and then one person scripting it, so it all kind of gets lost. None of the creatives on this book are bad writers, but it just feels like they're rushing to get all the bullet points out without letting any of the events sink in. Then again, while I want to say that this does feel like DC only greenlit it for the Wednesday crowd, the show and this story have 2 very different feels and wants, and tonally, none of it matches up. Even in this book, they call Olive Wednesday, which doesn't make sense since Olive isn't abrasive, nor is she outright a dark character, nor does she really have any character at all. Especially if you're reading the narration, it's not very Wednesday coded. However, a massive positive I do have for this book is that the art is amazing, especially when they get to let loose with the traumatic flashbacks. Batman looks really good in his new blues. So, what's my verdict? That's actually a very good question. I think my official stance has to be, read it. Read it means that you should read this book for yourself to see if you want to continue on with the series. It's not a bad book by any means, and it could easily just be me having a history with the IP that has me not clicking with it. However, I will say that I will be definitely checking this out when the trade comes out, or after a few issues, depending on how the buzz around it goes. It's a book that I really don't like, that I don't click with. Okay, here we go. I get to actually talk about the Absolute comic line. Well, okay, I'll get to insofar as that it's the 1 year anniversary of the Absolute line launch, and we've got a book about villains, I think. But I do want to read this, so let's get into it. This is Absolute Evil number 1, written by Al Ewing, pencils by Giuseppe Camuncoli, inks by Stefano Nessi, colors by Romulo Fiardo Jr., with letters by Tom Napolitano. Did I pronounce anyone's name right there? Well, it's the 1 year anniversary of the Absolute Universe, and its villains stand united. Without heroes, without protection, without restraint, there is only absolute evil. The emergence of superheroes have caught the attention of the world, and it certainly caught the attention of the people who run it. Ra's al Ghul, Veronica Cale, Eleanor Thawne, Hector Hammond, and the mysterious Joker have worked at cross purposes until now. But this growing threat requires new ways of thinking, and new partnerships. An insidious betrayal from within their ranks is imminent, and if they don't take action, they'll lose control of a planet that was built to be their playground. Great row, was that epic. So like the Solicitor said, this is a lot of the baddies that we know of, and some we don't, coming together and laying it all out. Or rather, laying out a fantastic way forward to give the universe more scope. See, last week I talked about the Marvel's Ultimate Universe being crafted for specific spotlights, so it was a matter of not needing to really see side quests or the whole of the world to get what was going on. And honestly, the Absolute Universe is done in a very similar way, but because of that, there wasn't a wider story in the Absolute Universe outside of, well, Darkseid created the Absolute Universe, the end. And we've just been riding the high of DC having an excuse to let creators create in a new sandbox. This comic particularly brings in all the baddies we know and love, including Brainiac, I think, and an ending with calling Lex Luthor to join the new Legion of Doom. It gives a big picture to the world. It also gives us the best look at the new Absolute Joker, who is slated to come out in Absolute Batman sometime soon. And he's not funny at all, and has seen into the heart of this universe, with the Omega Particle and evil being the lean of the world. It's swanky is all I'm saying, and we know what this dude looks like when he's not in that skin suit. Now, there really isn't an actual plot to this issue, though. I think it's just talking, and I have seen some people dislike it being basically evil exposition the comic. But it's really damn good exposition. How can you not like seeing the Justice League fall to evil in so many different ways? How can Hector Hammond, being the smuggest douchebag that you really wish Ra's al Ghul would just rip his heart out? And then, poof, surprise Brainiac. It's all really good. Well, okay, it was a surprise to me. I admit, if he popped up in that, I've only been keeping up with Absolute Wonder Woman and Absolute Batman and Absolute Martian Manhunter. So I'm sorry for Superman and The Flash and anyone else I'm talking about. So the writing is the tops for this. And it's matched by the art. Look, when you see great art that fires the purdy centers of your brain, that's kind of all you really need to say. Although I will say that Lex and a couple angles seem to look pretty daffy to me. Not weird, or not bad, just weird. Kind of fish-angled lensy. So my verdict for this is short, sweet, and to the point. Absolutely collect it. Collect it means that you should have it on your digital pull list for an immediate read. Have the physical on your pull list for posterity and also reading, and you should have all of the variant covers too. My personal fave is the Fabrizio De Tommaso one. But more than that, I've felt that feeling for every Absolute comic that's come out. Although I can't decide if Wonder Woman or Martian Manhunter are my personal favorites. But get all of them too, and you will find what DC truly can be when evil is actually saying they're the ones in control instead of DC editorial. I'm kidding. I love you guys. Except for that Red Hood bullshit you pulled a couple weeks ago. Why does it feel like every month so far I've had to do a special that's for a DC Super Ultra Mega Double Pendulum Summoned event? I mean, I'm hoping it's good, and it's a prelude to DC KO, which is, I'm still wondering if I should do a vid or a YouTube channel about the brackets, because boy do I have thoughts. But anyways, let me know if I should do that on my socials. Anyways, it's time to speed into Justice League, the Omega Act Special number 1. Written by Joshua Williamson, Art by Sian Tormi, colors by Yasmin Putri, with letters by Dave Sharp. First, The Solicit. A special oversized prologue to DC's biggest event of the year. Everything since DC All In Special number 1 has been building to this moment. Time Trapper is on the run from Darkseid's Legion. Racing through time to learn how to stop Darkseid's conquest, he witnesses how the future is already lost, and the only hope of survival lies with the Justice League. The Time Trapper has a plan to save the DCU, but means making an impossible offer to the League. I mean, that seems pretty much what's going on in the book, yeah. Essentially, though, this is an issue of Time Trapper, who is apparently Doomsday? I mean, he might not be. I know that he was sent to the end of the universe at one point. Brother just looks like Doomsday is all I'm saying. Showing Booster Gold, and sort of by the fact that he's not someone who can easily be frozen in time, the Flash, that there's no hope for the universe because every future is being invaded by Darkseid's legions. Now, maybe I'm just a dick, but I'm sorry that the 832nd century is under attack. But if the universe can't pull out another great darkness victory by then, that's not exactly a 21st century problem, is what I'm saying here. That's like the complete opposite end of the time spectrum if we look at it on a graph. Oh, and there's also some flashback to Laura and Ursa as kids on Krypton finding a tomb to the Omega King. But either way, it all ends with the point of an absolute champion needing to be crowned. Yep, that's why DCKO is happening. One person has to be crowned the absolute champion, so Darkseid can't do whatever he's gonna do in 80,000 years. Actually, that's not fair, because I didn't read the We Are Young saga for when Grodd broke time, apparently according to Annotation Box. I didn't read the last event I covered last month where I said it felt too much like it wanted to be Armageddon 2001 with its mystery. But interesting enough, this also has a moment where, wait, this person has more power than any of us knew? Which is just interesting how that keeps happening when it's related to time-based people. It's like it means something. So anyways, is this a good tease for DCKO? I think so, but I probably would have had more annotation boxes and laid out the story building up to this a little bit more. I get that it's supposed to be a culmination, so read everything, but you could have had fun with it and just done like an homage to what Walt Simonson's Mutant Massacre map was. That'd have been fun. But still, it is a good tease, although it really does weaken the already weird DCKO bracket. I mean, I know they're not on the list, but Absolute Champion means this is going to have Absolute Wonder Woman come out of nowhere and kick everyone's ass, right? Right? Because she's the best Absolute character? Maybe not, but we all know that Star Sapphire is not going to be able to beat Batman. That would be too silly. But honestly, the art also makes this work. It's really satisfying, top tier, and even gets a bit abstract at times. Never have the Flash trying to reach for me again, please. Thanks. So my final verdict on this is a bit nebulous, but I'm going to say buy it. Buy it means that it is definitely worth reading, and honestly, it's also worth owning a physical copy of. It's a solid prologue to a major event coming in, and I'm assuming introduces Omega Kara, since she's on one of the variant covers. Oh, and there's a couple good variant covers out there to get too. Yes, I think if I had time, I'd do a fun little something on DCKO before that officially comes out. We'll see on that. Given my track record talking about X-Men comics that have come out, if you're hearing this, that's because my wonderful sister Sammy didn't like it enough for a fun back and forth debate. Or, I liked it and she still didn't want to cover it. See, she's a casual, so if you can't get the diehard or the casual, then what else is there? Yes, I know, it would be very awkward if this cold open was for a comic that I actually enjoyed, right? Well, let's see how this goes. This is X-Men Age of Revelation Overture number 1. Written by Jed MacKay, pencils by Ryan Stegman, inks by J.P. Mayer, colors by Edgar Delgado, with letters by Clayton Cowles. Solicit first. The air rises. The resistance ignites. X years later. The Revelation territory stretches from the Atlantic to the Mississippi. A mutant utopia ruled by the air of apocalypse. But beneath the surface, rebellion brews. As a ragtag X-Men team strikes from the shadows, Revelation faces threats from within. It all begins here. The dawn of the Age of Revelation. Well, yes, that sounds like your stock Age of Apocalypse with the serial numbers filed off, doesn't it? Okay, I promise I'm going to try and be fair on this. I mean it. I really do like this creative team, and honestly, I'll take back some of my preconceived notions because by the time Glob blasts off the head of one of the Revelation's priestesses, is that a good way to describe her? Yeah, that works for me. By the time that happens, I think I might actually be invested. Okay, so the official plot for Age of Revelation is an X virus gets released, which turns people either into mutants or a corpse. Oh, and President 616 Cyclops is in his buff, meaty future body, and so is President 616 Beast in his new whitewashed body. There are proxies into this new world of jungle conflict. Actually, I do want to bring up that I think it's very interesting how we've switched post-apocalyptic viewpoints over the last 30 years. I know this is more, hey, the entire population in this area is pretty bare after the X virus, but it seems that generally as a society, we've traded out the post-apocalyptic ruined buildings and random flaming hobo barrels all over the place to nature reclaiming the Earth with random flaming hobo barrels everywhere. It's not a problem, I just don't think I really realized that shift over the last few decades until now. But anyways, I think all of the disparate parts we've seen come together really do come together. I needed to make that sentence better. Cyclops and Beast are actually really good eyes for the audience to see this new world. Now, I am still a little bit iffy on why certain people would follow the era of Apocalypse instead of being heroes forever and ever, Bowie style. And honestly, it's one of the things that I think that will hold this back is that to know the whole picture, I'm going to either have to follow it hardcore or wait until it gets 4 different trades and then an omnibus. But I have 17 first issues also coming out from this event, so I'm very much going to have to stick it out. I am also most looking forward to that Cloak and Dagger book, but anyone who's been on my channel on YouTube for at least one of my existing cycles knows that Cloak and Dagger are my second favorite character of all time. Yes, they count as one character. The first being Psyche. Anyways, honestly, the art team on this also blew me away. I particularly think that Psylocke Ray fight had that right amount of oomph to it. Though there are panels in here that I also really need as mini posters, like the Snikt or Glob not being in the jungle, but of the jungle. Glob is honestly the MVP in this comic that just works so well. It all honestly worked for me, and honestly, I think I truly do owe a sincere apology because I am legit very positive about this, despite being very negative about it over the last, 14 weeks about it. So, sorry, I guess. At least I'm not as popular as I once was, or we'd have more than a dozen people who would have heard me whining like a chode. So my verdict is, well, it's difficult for an event comic like this because I absolutely say that this is definitely worth buying, and even some of the variants are actually really good covers. So officially, I will say, this is definitely a buy it. However, it's part of an event line, so it's going to not be a straightforward sort of collect it, or put it on your pull list. It's going to be a case-by-case basis, but if you want a general, hey, is this something I may like, then this may be the best gauge for that, so definitely pick this up. Sorry I couldn't be more clear on that. It's late. I'm tired. I need a coffee. Someone donate to the Patreon and buy me a coffee. Oh, we have another reprinting of some of the From the Ashes stories. Well, I wasn't exactly a fan of the last one, but hey, these aren't big-named muties, so maybe they'll not rub me the wrong way this time. This is X-Men, The Undertow, number 1, with 2 stories being reprinted from X-Men From the Ashes, number 19 through 25. So we'll get to the creative teams when we get to those segments. Like right now, we get to Be Calmed, written by Alex Packnadel, art by Diogenes Neves, colors by Arthur Hesley, with letters by Clayton Cowles. From the Quick Solicit, on Australia's beaches, Heather Cameron answered to lifeguard even before her ex-gene granted her the adaptive ability to manifest any power to save a life. Heather and her brother, Davis, served as X-Men before retiring to their mutant island of Krakoa, but human supremacists forced Krakoa to retreat outside of time and space, and its people had to choose whether to leave with it or remain with a world that hates and fears them. Yeah, that's the general plot. Lifeguard has to move back in with her ailing mother in Australia. It sucks, but she's trying her best. However, when her job interview basically goes from, "Wow, you're great," to, "Oh, we can't have you here. You're a mutie, and there are kids." This causes Heather to snap, and she kind of turns into a spiky dinosaur person. Her power, however, is also causing people around her to become sick as she races through the city. She heads back to her house to seek the comforting arms of her mother. However, when she gets there, her quills and her sickness-spewing powers have her mother in critical condition. Her friend Steve, who goes by Ugly John since he's a mutant with the incredible evolution of 3 faces, is there to try and talk her down. This goes pretty shitty when the ambulance arrives. However, there's also cops, and Lifeguard flees with Steve, but one of the police snipes Steve's arm. It looks like his arm, but it might be something worse. And basically, Heather returns to the sea and becomes an island. It's poetic, I swear. Then there's Agents of Thanks, written by Tim Seeley, art by Eric Koda, colors by Arthur Hesley, and KJ Diaz with letters by Clayton Cowles. Judged for their avian and insectoid mutations, Barnell Bohusk and Angel Salvador weren't the mutants people thought of when they heard X-Men. But together they fell in love, started a large family, and even saved the world. Things have been even harder for mutants since the fall of Krakoa, but Beak has a plan to show how grateful he is to one of the uncanny X-Men. So Beak is the actual reason I wanted to read this, because yes, I didn't read From the Ashes on principle, and I'm honestly glad I didn't, because if this was told over multiple issues, it would not hit as hard. The plot is that Beak, Angel, and all of their kids go to Alaska to visit Cyclops' branch of the X-Men for Thanksgiving. Throughout the trip, Beak is happy and keeping the spirits of the kids up and everything like that, even though there's also an uber bitch on the plane because it's the Marvel Universe. There's only Karens and hippies cast as civilians. So while they have a happy Thanksgiving meal, Beak is also there to secretly ask Beast about a cure for whatever sickness one of his daughters has. However, Beast has been reverted to a much earlier memory at this point, so he has no idea what Beak is talking about. And this kind of breaks Beak. And on their way home, in the airport bathroom, he has a meltdown to a stranger who was kind of just staring at him. However, the stranger was actually someone that Beak had saved, so this normal human crying and thanking Beak so much because he wouldn't have had a Thanksgiving if it wasn't for him. And that gives the spark of joy back to Beak, because there's always something in life to be thankful for. And yeah, I really hate the lifeguard part of this story. I get it, but firstly, falling down but with mutants plays out in a single issue is a bit on the iffy side. And I honestly think it's only worse if it was stretched out. But I could be wrong. Maybe it was better when you got to pause in between the beats so it doesn't feel kind of generic. Maybe if I was more invested in lifeguard, it would also mean more. But this Beak story, damn, this Beak one does all the heavy lifting in this, and honestly, I think it's why I surprised myself with my verdict here. See, I was going to say this was ignorable. If you're interested, you should buy the back issues of From the Ashes so you can experience it where the breaks were in the story initially, and whatever else was in there. I think it's kind of silly to be reprinting stories from this close to when it was. However, I also think that this one might be worth actually picking up because of Beak. So my verdict is buy it with like 105 asterisks. Although I will add the caveat that you should just pick up the Dan Panosian variant cover with Juggernaut and Beak. It's a cute little cover. Alright, there's a Spider-Man Noir movie coming out soon, isn't there? Or whatever the Disney Plus thing's going to be. I'd make a comment, but this is actually like the 3rd or 4th version of this title. I will say, at least, I do really miss when Marvel would just have fun little runs of one-shots like the Noir line they did. There's a better world where X-Men Noir stuck as hard as the Spider-Man Noir did. Oh well, anyways, we're talking about Spider-Man Noir #1, written by Eric Larson, art by Andrea Briccardo, Colors by Rochelle Rosenberg, with letters by Joe Sabino. Solicit first, then the gushing. Brush up on the coolest Spider-Man before he hits the small screen. Spidey legend Eric Lawson puts on his writing hat to reinvent this Spider-Man like he did with the original, with rising star artist Andrea Broccardo. It's the 1930s and Peter Parker is a private detective by day, vigilante Spider-Man by night. Things were going well until a certain dame walked into his office to ask Peter to solve the case of her father's murder. The dame's name? Gwen Stacy. This case may not only break George Stacy's police department, but Spider-Man himself. Now, originally I did put a more in-depth plot to this book after the solicit premise, but I realized you really need to read this comic because, yeah, Eric Larson made the best Peter Parker Spider-Man book I've read in years, and it's not even a blue and red Spider-Man. Now, I should say that this is not Spider-Man Noir at all, personally. Originally, it was a very straightforward noir that happened to have some Spidey theming. This is a Spider-Man book set in the 1930s using the Spider-Man Noir theming, but not actually the character dynamic or anything like that. But listen, truly listen. The sheer fun and glee I felt reading this takes away the nitpicky, nerdy side of my brain that wants a more faithful relaunch. That's actually something that always gets overlooked by a lot of people because they want to have some universal takeaway, like, Spider-Man Noir must be the way that I want it. It is a split-brain thing. I've been reading comics since before I could read words, and the most universal truth that I found after 35 years is that ultimately, it's about the feelings you get when you're reading a book that matters more than the actual internals. That being said, this book is Eric Larson absolutely decimating the current 616 Spider-Man. By the end of this book, all I could see was that Simpsons meme, that's how you're supposed to do it. But honestly, that's where I think this book shines. The fact that the best scene of this book is Aunt May and Peter Parker having coffee together says so much. To anyone who's coming in new without really knowing Spider-Man, it might be a weird couple of pages where she shows up for no reason, just so Larson can make a joke about how Peter Parker is totally that dude who would complain that Judy Garland was Dorothy and not Shirley Temple. However, moments like that with side characters and moments of humanity is a major part in Spidey books, and that's basically lost art at this point. I mean, pair that with the quips, the fact that Peter is hard up on cash to pay his rent, and even him being a lovable dork just works. And the art is again not reflective of Spider-Man Noir, but it's absolutely a fantastic art style for a Spidey book. I know it sounds like I'm harping on at this point, but with the art direction being so smooth, the character models being so on point, and even the coloring being so vibrant, it all leads me into, this really didn't want to be a Spider-Man Noir book. So my verdict for this is going to be split. For the Spider-Man Noir purists, for those who like the purple prose and the darker tone in both art and writing, you will not be happy with this book on any level. It is a really bad version in that sense. Ignore it if you want that, as sad as it is that you would miss a really good Spidey book. However, if you want a good Spidey book, then this is pretty epic and worth the verdict of collect it. Collect it means that you should have it on your pull list, both digitally and physically. You should have all the variant covers, which are all really damn good. Special shout out to the Andrea Sorrentino cover personally. And do that for the rest of the series. And hey, if you've never heard of Eric Larson before, please read Savage Dragon. It is a shockingly perfect time capsule of comic books since it actually started ongoing in 92. Do TikTok reactions to it. I would love to see someone who's like, man, I really like Spider-Man, and then they just pick up the latest Savage Dragon. That would be kind of funny. I'm just going to lay it out bare right here. I have absolutely no connection with White Tiger as a character. Most of my engagement with this character has been as a guest star, so it should really be interesting to see what they do with her in a Hispanic and Latin American Heritage Month special. Let's find out in White Tiger Reborn number 1, with 2 stories, so that should be fun. First the solicit, then the specifics. Ava Ayala is a current wielder of the powers of the White Tiger, bearing the amulet of power that imbues its host with a connection to mystical powers and martial arts prowess. As Ava returned to her old stomping ground to protect the innocent, she becomes embroiled in a mystery that forces her to confront her family's murder and a convoluted history linking them to White Tiger's mantle, as Ava is brought face to face with Hector Ayala, her dead brother and the original White Tiger. And then I generally cut off the parts to talk about the creatives. I'm not trying to sell these to you, unless they're good. Wait until the end to figure out whether you should buy it. So the first story is Reborn, written by Daniel Jose Older, art by Bruno Abdias, colors by Marcelo Costa, with letters by Ariana Mar. This is actually really good. Basically, it's showing Ava as White Tiger, who gets linked with the spirit of her brother, except it's not. It's Despair, the fear god. She then binds fully with her tiger amulet and kicks his ass with the spirit of her brother helping. Then there's Song of the Koki, written by Cynthia Pelayo, art by Moses Hidalgo, colors by Dono Sanchez Almara, with letters by Ariana Mar. Basically, Roxanne is trying to arrest someone who's showing evidence that they're destroying parts of Puerto Rico, and both Ava and her niece kicks Roxanne's ass, reconciling their dispute after Ava got the White Tiger powers instead of her. It's nice. Honestly, I think the biggest thing to bring up is simple in reading this. Both of these stories would have been so damn neat to read if there was more of a setup. Would it be a top seller? Probably not. Although Marvel could easily market a book for the Hispanic audience that they don't really have right now, with Duolingo drops on the same day for US and Spanish readers. It also gets some really easy sales with how pissed off it would make the current Red Hat regime. But it is actually really nice to see that there is clearly someone who had passion behind it. Again, I've never read White Tiger really as a solo character, so I had no idea Hector was killed by police or corrupt cops or however that worked out. But these brief moments looking at the character, it's really good. So my verdict for this is collect it. Collect it means that, well, you can't have it on your pull list because it's a one and done. You should definitely have it hard copy and digital, and you should have all the variant covers for it. There's only a couple, it's not a lot. But it's a really good look at why sometimes doing a one-off special for whatever specific month it is. It's an issue I often have when I read Pride Month special or Voices or stuff like that, where it's some of these stories would have been great if you cared enough to have the characters be characters outside of marketing pitches. There's really good dynamics here that both Daniel and Cynthia bring up in their respective stories that could have been really great bullet points in an ongoing. The character seems interesting. It really annoys me that it's a one and done, and they'll probably relegate White Tiger to more special guest appearances later. That being said, definitely check this book out. It's really good. Why yes, I often enjoy meta-commentaries on authorship and the creative process, although the last one that Image released that tried that felt overly bloated and up its own ass, so I guess we'll see if I'm not just cynical. Let's find out with The Author Immortal number 1. Written by Frank J. Barbier, art by Morgan Beam, with letters by Hassan Otsman Elho. I say that man's name different every time I have to say it. You know the drill, solicit first. A story about the stories that shape us, and the powers it still hold. Hector Ramirez is a failed writer who gets the opportunity of a lifetime to help reboot the fantasy book series that defined his childhood. But when he discovers the original author has mysteriously vanished in his fictional world, Hector is pulled into a realm where the stories are alive, and some are willing to kill to stay in control. Wow, yeah, that's generally the premise, but it's also why I like saying the detail of the plot is really what gets me interested. The details here is that Hector is a bit of a mess, and he's not even considered a great writer. He's got a trans kid named Al, and is in fact going to be co-writing that fantasy book series, the premise says, with a very, 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 very thinly veiled analogy to famed Holocaust denier and TradCon bigot Joanne Rowlings. It's a good bit of tension, but we also see Hector as just a ball of contradictions. See, he's engaged to marry his manager, though he's getting pictures of an office fling and is even looking up London escorts. He's agreeing to relaunch his favorite childhood book series while raising a trans kid who the author wants to not exist. He's not a good writer, but he's a perfect pawn. Honestly, it'd be a great meditation of a book slice of lifestyle if it wasn't for the inky black monsters killing people in cutaways from the main story. That is, before sucking Hector and Al into the fantasy world at the end. Now, I'm assuming the girl at the end with the big axe named Alethea is the book character that Alex named his kid after. But we'll find out more about that next month. I like this book. I know it's 50 pages, and mostly we get the setup, but that setup is really good. It gives the mystery of why not Robert Galbraith needs a co-writer instead of just writing under a different pen name. It gives us the father-trans-son dynamic and is a great look at all the characters involved, with snappy writing, a good hook, and just lots of dominoes being set up to let you know that this is going to be a character-heavy isekai story. As for the art, a friend of mine said that it feels very much like an old newspaper strip recolored, but I'd say it just looks really cool either way. For me, it's coming off more 90s British indie book that would have been gangbusters under the Vertigo Comics brand. Although I do honestly think that the coloring is what makes this just top-notch. So my verdict is clearly going to be collect it. It is awesome, so you should have it on your pull list digitally, have it on your pull list physically, and please get the variant covers for it too. The price of the comic really works when you get a really nice double-stuffed issue like this. I love it, and hey, I am really hoping this book goes into the fan dichotomy of loving a story, but the death of the author in hindsight. Now remember, if you want to check out media from a person who's a twat or doesn't deserve your money, used bookstores and the secondhand market does not go into supporting those creators. They just support local retailers and scalpers. Last year, the first one of this came out and apparently did good enough for a sequel. I have not read it, but I'm always hoping that doesn't take away from any of the first issues that pop up on my desk. Let's find out as we check out Kill All Immortals II, number 1. Written by Zach Kaplan, illustrated by Fico Ozio, colors by Diego Roca, with letters by Hassan Otsman-Elhau. The Asvalds were once a powerful billionaire Viking family with a source of secret immortality, until the family's only daughter, Frey Asvald, led her brothers in a principled rebellion to overthrow their barbaric father and end their eternal powers. But when an ancient and supernatural adversary threatens to destroy their precarious empire and kill them one by one, they must band together as a family, survive another deadly war, and dare to test their new mortality. Yes, I mean, that's about the sum of it. The first series had Frey breaking the immortality, and now she and her family are under attack from other immortals. I'm actually kind of glad that I missed that first story, because, see, I've seen the "we hate being immortal, let's end it" over and over and over again. But the after that, after the "we're immortal now," is compelling and character-driving. Granted, this is compelling in the abstract, because the directness of this action-heavy comic really doesn't bring up a lot of room for introspection. It fills the void with an assault in a boardroom, chopsticks through the neck at a charity event, and even Big Papa Asvald showing back up with a flamethrower to help his happy family. It is a wild ride, at least in this issue. There's definitely room for growth and, having heart-to-hearts later on, but we have flamethrowers and chopsticks. This is definitely a grab onto the safety bar and hold on for the ride kind of book. It's fun. I like fun. So my verdict for this is short and sweet. Read it. Read it means that if you're into action comics, you won't be disappointed in this. It is definitely worth checking out, and if you dig it, pull it. There's actually a couple really good variant covers out for it as well. Now, I haven't really come up with a general rule of thumb as a reader when it comes to actors writing for their characters, but that's usually because I rarely realize that's who's writing, since I don't really try and go in-depth. I want to be blank when I read these. So I guess it's been generally positive, looking at some of the stuff I've done. But now let's see if that changes as we read Masters of the Universe, Andra number 1. Written by Tiffany Smith, art by Adriana Mello, colors by Giuliano Paratelli, with letters by AndWorld Design. Adapting to her new role as man-at-arms, Andra finds herself struggling with training new cadets. They must be ready to fight against any and all threats, magical or otherwise. But if Andra can't believe in herself, how can she expect others to follow her lead? When a call for assistance on Orcus Island turns out to be a magical threat from the evil Count Marzo, Andra will have to delve into her past, use her technical know-how, and find her own power if she hopes to save Eternia. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't seen any of the last few He-Man shows, even if it was considered really good by my friends and people I know who've seen it. That's on me, so I have no idea why Andra is the new Men-at-Arms, or where Burt Reynolds went. Maybe he looked more like Tom Selleck. Either way, he's not missed, because this was actually really good. So while the major conflict here is Andra's inexperience with fighting magic using her tech, and that comes to a head with the trip home that leads to Count Marzo trying to kill everyone for his amulet, I think what really grabbed me wasn't that part. It wasn't the action He-Man part, but rather the broader scopes of her position. Andra is a savant when it comes to tech. She sees a pile of parts there and can piece together a bazooka in seconds. But the people she's training are just people. And the disconnect between, well, I can do this with my eyes closed, why can't you? And being able to actually teach that to people is something I find far more fascinating, especially getting older in my life. I don't think it's really explored a lot in media. Granted, I will admit that it's not exactly explored here. Again, there is a very much magic versus tech, and her own history is focused on here, but I just like that concept either way. I think my biggest takeaway, though, is that I really should go and watch that new He-Man show. Well, okay, I say new, but the Netflix show started in 2021, so within 5 years counts as new, right? Right. They're a pretty liked show from the people I know. Not as milestone poppy as She-Ra was, but still very good shows. Now, I know this is going to be on the shorter side, but this is definitely a book that can be enjoyed without any past knowledge, but is most assuredly, for fans of the IP especially, overall really damn good. So my verdict for this book is, read it with an asterisk. Read it means that it absolutely is worth reading, with a special asterisk that if you are already a fan of the property or have seen the Netflix He-Man shows, then that would be where this is absolutely worth buying digitally and physically. It is a great one-shot that any fan would be happy to get. At least so I'm telling myself. This is a book called Starship Godzilla. Do I even need a cold opening with this? That looks like the best mix of Karyu and Kiryu that I could ever want, although that definitely looks like classic Mechagodzilla. But the real question will be, is the story going to be good? So let's not gild the lily and let's find out in Starship Godzilla #1, written by Chris Gooch, art by Oliver Ono, with letters by Hassan Otsman Elhau. The Kaizei era goes into space inside a brand new Mechagodzilla. You don't think kaiju were only on Earth, did you? In a fight for galactic supremacy, no weapon is more powerful than a kaiju, and no team is better equipped to capture and transport these titanic monsters than the crew of the Starship Godzilla. This ragtag group flies through space in Mechagodzilla and takes high-risk, high-rewards missions across the galaxy. A kaiju heading towards your planet? Give them a call. A colossal space pest clogging up your trade route? They'll get rid of it. A galactic civil war utilizing kaiju on both sides? They'll do their best to stay out of it. But where there's a galactic war, there's a galactic conspiracy. And this may be one fight our crew doesn't land on the same side of. So yeah, that's the premise of the series, and I'm sure that'll be on the back of the trade. But this first issue is godlike in its execution, because it gets us into the crew and the situation without that. Okay, let's just go over it. The first issue has the crew stealing a clutch of kaiju eggs, and hijinks ensues on the ship when one of them hatches. This is a perfect self-contained funnel of a story that I fell in love with the characters in only 20 pages. And it was so good that the last page actually got me more than I really admit it should. But the whole thing is perfect to showcase the main crew, although I will say that I already know that my heart will never get the special Ick Blob one-shot. I will have to live with that. Seriously though, the fact that Ayan, that'd be the How to Draw Manga chick on the cover, is a brilliantly written character, being in essence the second in command, the heavy lifter, and also the compassionate one. But the personality of the captain is just fascinating. But then you get Ilsa, who's basically the earpiece until the end, and then you know what? Just read the damn book. It's fucking near perfect. It is literally one of the first few issues that I have ever covered that I would say is a 6 out of 5 if I ever did a rating system like that. Somehow, I want to compare it to Cowboy Bebop, but this truly is its own beast, and I love it. Everyone needs to go get this, so there is a second printing at the very least. As for the art, let me put it this way. I want to see the pre-colors on this, because I think this is basically manga bones with a coat of indie art paint over it. That's not a bad thing at all, mind you, and it makes it just absolutely brilliant while you're reading it. It's dynamic when it needs to be. It's bombastic and big. It can be quiet and slow. It's both frightening and adorable. It's everything rolled into one. It is a Meredith Brooks song level, and I just love it. So yeah, I already said my verdict for this, but the short answer is collect it. Collect it means that it is absolutely worth being put onto your pull list, both digitally and physically. It deserves to have every issue that comes out bought with every variant cover, because good God, they're awesome. And let's be clear, the Kaisei era of Godzilla comics as a whole has been the closest to perfect an IP relaunch can be, so go check all those out. And you would have if you listen to my other episodes, whenever those come out. I've been seeing promo for this comic at the end of every Mad Cave comic since I started back up. I know the first 3 pages by heart at this point, and I'm still really curious about how this 1970s rental-looking comic is actually going to turn out. This is Gunpowder Prophets #1, written by Justin Jordan, art by Patrick Piazzalunga, colors by Roman Stevens, with letters by Taylor Esposito. Huck and Marnie help people for money. Well, in theory, anyway. For some reason, their help always seems to involve massive amounts of property damage, a somehow guaranteed collision with the supernatural, and if Marley has his way, a huge body count. They're the Gunpowder Prophets, and a simple job rescuing a girl from a backwater cult turns weird when the super groovy leader's supernatural powers turn out to be very, very real. It's 70s style horror mixed with grindhouse action in Gunpowder Prophets. I was initially going to make a joke about how this is basically the plot to Marley and Me, but I expect that is not really a funny joke. What is funny, though, is just the sheer fun of this book. It's not funny in that it's a comedy sense, but the lighthearted yet visceral tone is really just a hoot and a half. Marley is the heavy tank who does indeed love killing, and I even love the descriptor that he went to Nam because he was crazy. I love that Huck is the Wrangler jacket type action hero, in that Robert Redford way. Yeah, I know a friend said he was basically supposed to be Brad Pitt from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but you have to understand something about me. The denim jacket hero is an archetype that transcends Quentin Tarantino's love letters to feet in grindhouse Hollywood. Seriously though, it's an archetype that no one really has named yet, so I'm going to go with denim jacket hero. But honestly, America steals the show in just her little bit of page time here, and don't think I didn't see the Argento name and dock this comic a point just because there needs to be a lot more clashing colors here. This is great. The art is fairly good standard, but it definitely gets a bump through that coloring, which gives it that slightly worn VHS fuzz that makes me know that at least one point someone wondered if they should draw in a boom mic somewhere. I love it. It's awesome. I know this is a relatively shorter episode, but frankly, that's because my verdict is collect it. Collect it means that you should absolutely have this on your pull list, both digitally and physically, and you should definitely get the variants. Although I think there's only 1 or 2, so it's not that big of an ask. The book is not just worth reading, but absolutely is a book that should be read. It's fun, it's funny, it's a thrill ride, and badass. Hi, I'm AJ Carey. This may be my channel, but this is not my show. This is Sammy's Picks. Basically, once a week, my co-host on Killing 15 Minutes, Mything 15 Minutes, and Blanking 15 Minutes, oh, and she's also my sister, picks a new release from our first issues pool that she wants to talk about, as a barely literate casual comic reader. So, time for the Casual Comicist. This shall be fun.
I love October, and I will be having so much fun this week. I am Sam Rossi, this is Sammy's Picks, and I am the Casual Comicist. I'm a child stuck in an adult body, swear. What I mean is that if I got a chance to read or do something that brings me joy, I'm going to do it. If it's something that a 3-year-old would like and get enjoyment out of, I probably would too. Which brings me to this. I picked, wow. Got a couple of voices in my head, but that's a different story. And this week I picked Halloween Trick or Read 2025, Spidey and His Amazing Friends. Wow, that's a mouthful. AJ told me it was going to be an easy read, so it would be perfect for me. First off, he is my little brother. He's allowed to make jokes like that. Secondly, he's not wrong. Some days you just need an easy read, something easy to get lost in. There are 3 stories in this book, so when we get to each story, I will say the artist for the book. This is because Steve Beeling wrote all 3 stories with lettering, because lettering is an art, by Arsena Studio. First thing I want to say, the second page of this book is how to read a comic. I wish I knew that when I was a kid, because all you did as a kid, and I can tell you a lot about comic books by the pictures, not what they freaking said. As a kid, you learn to read left to right, but it's not the same in a comic book, because you can go left to right to center, then back down to right or left. You just have to understand the flow of the page. And that's something that you are not usually taught as a beginner reader of comics. With that being said, next page had the characters of the books, which kind of worked out because I didn't know there was a female Doc Ock. But I digress. The first story is Helpful Hulk, with art by Antoniello Delena, and colors by Dario Cabrera. No, it's gone. Basically, Hulk wants to help his friends, and he does. It's a super cute and goes on about how important it is to help in your own way and try to be able to do what you can do. Next up was Best Friends Forever. Pencils by Gianfranco Floro, inks by Fabio Franchi, and colors by Dario Cabrera again. We have Dr. Ock, which, again, I did not know she was female, that we had a female Doc Ock in this show, movie, book. And Electro, making a plan to take all the power for themselves. Villains can't be trusted, even though they are your best friends. In the end, Spidey crew called for help, and Hulk showed up to stop the evil duo. Even though Doc Ock proceeded to backstab Electro because she wanted all the power to herself. Villains can't be trusted, guys. They have a moral code. Much better moral code than most heroes. And last but not least is my favorite story, Paint It Green. I love Green Goblin. I love the color green. Verde is my favorite color. Pencils by Antoniello Delena. Inks by Christina Stella, and colors done by Lucio De Giuseppe. Green Goblin is throwing green paint-filled balloons all over New York City. And he doesn't care if that bugs you because it's funny to him. And you know what? I've thrown a lot of water balloons at people from balconies, and funny as hell. In the end, Hulk saves the day. Again. Basically, Hulk saves the day in all 3 books. He's green. It's Halloween. I don't know. It worked. With having multiple artists on 3 stories, you can't tell. There's no difference, which helps with the stories. Marvel has given kids activities and masks of the Spidey crew in this. So, it is geared towards the little people, but I'm a little people. I don't want responsibilities anymore. I truly love how it is an easy read, and that the 6-year-old Spawn would love it if he actually took the time to read. Gen Alpha really scares me, guys. Anyways, it had good lessons, nice stories, great artwork, and lettering is perfect. I wish other comics had this clear, concise, well-spaced, perfect lettering, guys. So, that's the new high bar there, guys. But that's just my opinion. What is yours? I'm the casual comicist, Sam Rossi. And you can give me your opinion on Facebook at Carry On Productions or at Carry On Prod on Twitter. See you swinging from the web, Inklings.
With all of that, though, maybe I'm wrong, or I missed a comic worth talking about. Let me know on the YouTube video version of this, on whatever podcast platform you're listening on, or on social medias at the Comic Archivist page on Facebook, on Twitter at First Issues Now, all one word, and even on Blue Sky at AJC Does It All, without any underscore. I'm always open to being told how wrong I am about the current mainstream and indie books alike. Don't forget to like, share, follow, subscribe, and all the other stuff that I'm being told I need to say to keep this show going. Don't forget to check out the other Carry On Production podcasts like Killing 15 Minutes, Mything 15 Minutes, and Blanking 15 Minutes. They're great, I promise. More than anything, though, remember, stay golden, Inklings.